Thanks for going down the road with me, Joel Heitkamp. It's a whole new venture for me. 15 years in talk radio, and before that I had, 14 years in the legislature. So it isn't as though I'm not used to having a microphone or a camera or any of those things around me. I get that. I understand it. But it's the first time I've ever had a daily TV show where we're going to have a chance and an opportunity to visit like this. So that part's going to be fun. Now, here's the thing about that road. It's going to be bumpy. There's going to be some potholes. There's going to be some mistakes. There's going to be some wrong turns here and there. But by and large, I think it's going to be a fun ride. I really do. I think it's going to be a fun ride. Now, when you're in the media business and in the politician business for as many years as what I have been, you just assume everybody knows who you are. Let me tell you who I am, in case many of you, and I'm assuming it is, many of you don't have a clue who maybe I am. So here we are. I grew up in a little town called Manador, North Dakota, which means you went to high school in Hankinson, North Dakota. If you don't know where Hankinson is, I live south of Hankinson. And so where I live right now, I'm 10 miles from South Dakota and 10 miles from Minnesota. That's right, way down in that corner. I was one of 7 kids, all born in 9 years. Yeah, we were Catholic. And as Mom put it, you're the last of 7, Joel, and the only reason you're here is because I didn't know about the pill until after you came along. So that's just the truth of my mom's gone. So she passed away, and you can't do a fact check on her, but if you could, she'd tell you that that's the truth. Husband for a lot of years, 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren. There's just a lot of things in my life that I've had an opportunity to do. I officiated high school and college football for over 30 years, hunter, fisher. So, yeah, I think you've got an idea. And the reason there's a motorcycle behind me is because I still ride Harley, and I ride a lot. That's who I am. Through this show, I'm hoping that we can find out who you are or what your interests are. I know that mine, in many cases, are political. They are. In fact, some of the conversations that I've had and the people that I get to know on the other side of the aisle have been the most enjoyable. Let me bring in one. Let me bring in State Representative Rick Becker from Bismarck. Representative Becker, welcome to Down the Road.
Thanks, Joel. I'm happy to be on, and congratulations on your new show.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to doing this a lot with you because of just what I said. You're plain spoken. You're somebody who, when you ask a question, he gives you the answer. And a lot of times, even though I don't like the answer, you give it to me. So let's just get into it a little bit. The debate last night, Pence, Harris, who won?
Pence won. Yeah.
Why?
Well, he was able to, I think, land more blows, and it probably just comes down to that. He was able to land more blows, I think. He had some issues. There were a couple questions he couldn't answer, but he was able to spin some things so that for the viewer, there were more questions that were not answered by Senator Harris.
So, I'm the Democrat in the room. You're the Republican. For me, I don't know that I would have said either one won flat out. If I had to say that one of them won, I would probably say Kamala Harris. And the reason being that to me, her job last night was to not goof up. If you believe in the polls, you believe that they're ahead. If you believe in those polls, you don't win a presidency through a vice presidential debate. If that was the case, Dukakis would have been president. He never was. But I think you could lose one or get in big trouble because of one. And I think that she held serve. And I'm curious what you think about that, Rick.
Yeah, she did better than I thought. She really did. I find that generally Kamala does not appear to be authentic or genuine to the average citizen. And she can come across as strident. And I thought that she did much better on both those counts than I was expecting. Not that she excelled, but better than expected.
Well, and one of the things that played out all over social media today was the fact that Vice President Pence, interrupted a lot and went long a lot versus what Senator Harris did. So I want to give you an example. To me, it's a little different, Rick, in the fact that she's a woman, because if she gets directly in his face, then she's considered this word. And if she's too aggressive, she's considered this word. And I think I really think that it's a double standard for women. I think it's harder for them. I think it's a lot harder for them. And when she was being interrupted by Vice President Pence, this was the approach she took. I want to take a view, if I can, of number one here.
So no, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I
I
want to
have
add,
to
but
weigh in
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh
speaking.
in.
Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait,
I'm speaking.
be important if you said the truth.
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Now, the one thing I'm going to add there, Representative Becker, is when my wife looks at me and says, I'm speaking, I'm in deep trouble. I've already lost the argument. And I want to know what you think about that.
Pence interrupted a couple of times, but he was able to turn that into a positive, because when he interrupted, and after the presidential debate, everyone's acutely aware of the interruption factor. He truly interrupted a couple of times, but each time he landed a significant blow. And I agree with you 100%. I think when a woman is in a leadership type position, there is a double standard. One of the very few places I actually agree there's a double standard, because it's very hard, I think, for a woman to navigate that very thin line between coming across bitchy or strident versus coming across to relax. It's very difficult. And so I can empathize with that. I thought she did fairly well. I know she still turned some people off, but no matter what, as you would likely agree, the two sides that are already embracing their particular candidate, they viewed it through a lens in which it's just going to substantiate their beliefs. I think she did okay, as good as can be. But back to the point with Pence interrupting, he only did it a couple of times, and it was worth it. He really struck blows. Now, him talking too long or over that kind of annoyed me when the moderator had to keep saying, please, and he kept talking, not with passion, in which case you would override your time a little bit, but very, very slowly, just completely ignoring her. And that was a little bit bothersome.
That's two debates in a row. Two debates in a row where if you ask the average American, they would say that the moderator did a bad job. They would say that the moderator needed to be more forceful. If nothing else, they should have a button where they can shut off the individual's microphone so that there's some level of control, that both sides agree to these rules. Why wouldn't they adhere to them? Last night was frustrating. And it was frustrating for me as a Democrat because it was mostly Pence that was talking too long. And as far as I'm concerned, the vice president should have been told by Susan, the moderator, to shut up. You say, Mr. Vice President, your time is up. Mr. Vice President, your time is up. Shut up. Shut up. It's her turn. And maybe that's why they don't have me moderate, Representative, because I wouldn't be afraid to say that.
Yeah, well, you and I both. Now, but interesting, Joel, I wonder, do you know what the breakdown was for speaking time between the two candidates?
I don't. I never looked at the number because all they wanted to talk about today, Representative Becker, was the fly.
Yeah.
I mean, a fly flew on Mike Pence's head, for those of you who don't know, and it stayed there. I do know this. The fly that landed on his head stayed there for a little over 2 minutes because Lord knows we needed to know that fact coming out of the debate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all over social media. A fly on his head stayed there for over 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, before coming on with you, Joel, I stopped by a Halloween store to see if I could find a big plastic fly, and I was going to put it on my head for you. But so it'd be interesting, and I wish I had looked it up because I had the sense that Pence talked much more time than Harris. However, I've heard that Harris actually spoke a greater amount of seconds or minutes, if you will. So that's really interesting. That makes me wonder how the moderator handled things. But yeah, the talking over the time. I mean, you agree to the rules, finish up. You got a couple seconds.
Yeah, and I would add, I'd be really surprised if that was the case. I would, that if Harris actually talked more times than Pence, because she just seemed to be, more courteous when it came to the moderator. I think that on that's something we both should agree. Now, one of the goals that Kamala Harris had last night was to explain from the Democratic standpoint of how the administration has handled the COVID situation. So in just a second, we're going to get a chance to listen to cut number 2 here. But this all dates back to what happened in January. And, of course, the Woodward book the conversation out of that. So let's take a look at cut 2.
The vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
You know, clearly she's going back to the information that the American public has now, that the Trump administration knew about COVID far in advance. And when the president said he wanted the nation to remain calm, that he did, you know, for many of us, we can handle the truth. Just tell us. I mean, and we struggle with the fact that he didn't tell people. You're a physician, you're a state representative. I'd love to know your opinion on this.
Well, I'm not looking to give anyone a pass, but knowing that something has significant potential and trying to keep the populace calm about it isn't unreasonable. The knowing about COVID is different than knowing the full ramifications as they were playing out day by day by day. And as I think Pence, indicated, for instance, Trump was one of the first ones to close down anyone coming in from China. And he was called out by the Dems as being a xenophobe and so forth, but it turned out to be a very good policy. So I don't know that when you don't have all the answers, if it makes sense to be an alarmist, at least not until you have the facts.
Well, but Representative Becker, when we come back, let's talk about that, because
Sure.
I think the information that he gave Bob Woodward showed that he knew what was going to happen. But let's visit some more right after this.
You just might find the home of your dreams this weekend by watching the Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes Sundays at 6 p.m. and Wednesdays at 7 on Beck, featuring properties from Bismarck, Mandan, Minot, and surrounding areas. The Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes presents desirable properties that are for sale, lets you meet your Alliance realtors, and provides critical insights into local happenings from community and business leaders. Join us this Sunday evening at 6 or Wednesday at 7 for the Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes on Beck.
Today's households have more digital devices than ever before. More links to family, business, education, and entertainment. Beck Communications spent over 10 years building North Dakota's fastest fiber optic internet service. Beck Lightband Internet, outpacing speeds in large cities nationwide. Lightband Internet handles all your digital needs without throttling your connection to the world. Beck Communications, valuable digital connections in rural North Dakota.
As the mayor of Bismarck, I invite you to join together today and stand united in the fight to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Case counts are steadily on the rise in the Bismarck-Mandan metro area, so please do your part. Protect yourself and others by wearing a mask when you're not at home. During the pandemic response, scientists have determined wearing a mask is a benefit to you and to those around you. This help keeps others from getting sick and may lessen the severity of illness if you were infected with COVID-19. We're all in this together. So let's get kids back to school, preserve our local economy, and keep our community strong. Let's show everyone how we come together to keep Bismarck the safe, resilient community we know and love. For more information, visit health.nd.gov/coronavirus. That's health.nd.gov/coronavirus.
Bismarck Central, 4800.
4800, go ahead.
Requesting social services on-call team.
Stand by. 4800 social services requesting additional information.
You can advise social services that we have an 18-month-old female who was in a residence with a mother, now being transported to medical care for overdose.
Welcome back to Down the Road with me, Joel Heitkamp. The inaugural show, and one of the individuals that I've got on with me still is Representative Rick Becker. Before the break, we were having a chance to talk about COVID and how the administration has handled COVID. Last night, Senator Kamala Harris saying they knew well in advance, and they didn't do what they needed to do. I was visiting with Dr. Becker about that, and before the break, I wanted to give you an opportunity to say what you would have done if you had that information. Being a physician, being somebody whose calling has been in medicine, if you would have known in January what the president clearly knew, that it was airborne, that you could get it from quite a distance, that it didn't matter who you were, you could get it, how would have you dealt with it if you were sitting in the White House?
Well, I can tell you that with whatever information I had, it would be most likely that I'd be sharing that with the American people. But what the point I'm getting at, that you can potentially cut Trump some slack, is knowing that it's airborne. I mean, basically it's a coronavirus. It's a cold. So, duh, it's airborne. Duh, you can get it from a distance. Duh, it's aerosolized. Those types of things aren't the part that could be alarming. The question at hand would be, what is the R naught value, or the transmissibility, which I don't think they knew at that time? What's the lethality or mortality of it, which I don't think they knew at the time? So those are the things that you have to take into consideration before you say, everyone, run.
But those are some of the things that they should have known. I mean, in fairness, our country wasn't exactly the first country to have it come to. And I think that was part of her argument last night. Now, we were debating whether Kamala Harris won or Mike Pence won. And I thought that this was a real good moment for the vice president, Rick. I really did. I think that this is an old line that's been used in many debates, but when we play number 3 for you here, I think you're going to lean back and say, yeah, that was a good moment for him. So take a listen and view this a little bit.
Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own fact.
That's a line he used many times last night. And I think that's a line that resonates with a lot of people. When you go down that road, it's kind of a different way of saying you lied. And I'd like your take on that.
Yeah. To my count, he used it twice. I think he used it effectively. I'm not fond of that technique. I don't think it works, and which is why he used it. And it does bring a viewer to call into question the veracity of Senator Harris, but it's not actually addressing anything of substance. So it worked for him, and he did it well. But I don't like it. It's not a good argument.
Well, and going back to what we had talked about earlier, how you like to link certain campaigns and certain people with certain things that the public, or at least you assume that the middle of the public, the people that are swing voters here or there, don't like. And many people see the Green New Deal as though, it's something that is just going to radicalize America when it comes to our energy sources and everything that goes with it. Vice President Biden almost lost the nomination because of it. He didn't come out for it. I mean, he did not come out for it. In fact, if you look at those early states where they're far more northern, far more liberal in terms of the Democrats voting in the primary, they didn't like that he didn't come out for it. He didn't turn his race around until he got down to South Carolina, which was a much more conservative Democratic base. But I want to play clip 4 for you here, because I think that this goes to the heart and soul of what we do in North Dakota, where we use coal, we use natural gas, we use oil, we use all of those in our economy here. But yet, how do you link that to someone when it comes to their politics? Take a view of number 4 here.
They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland.
So banning fracking, ban fossil fuels, all of that. Anybody with a big diesel pickup in North Dakota heard that and didn't like what they heard. Anybody in Williston, North Dakota that just bought a new home didn't like what they heard. I understand that. I get that. But is that, when you fact check that, not everything he said there is true. I think you'd have to admit that. But is that running against a vice president versus running against a president? That's my question of you, Rick.
No, I think that was one of several really good points that he brought up. To pin Harris and Biden with the Green New Deal is to be extremely damaging in several states, probably the most important of which is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the key to everything. And with all the coal in Pennsylvania, the horror of the idea that they would do away with coal and irreparably damage Pennsylvania's economy, I think it does go well beyond the vice president. It goes to Biden and what it means to Pennsylvanians, to other energy-rich states, if he were to be elected.
Well, and they frack in Michigan. I mean, they frack in Michigan. That's a big oil state. People don't see it that way. I'm just wondering, in the minute that we have left, Representative Becker, how big of a difference a vice presidential debate is. What does it have on the race? Give me your 30-second take on that.
Sure. Two things. Number one, what Americans saw in the first debate, I don't know that there were really any winners. There was maybe someone who lost less. So if they wanted to have something that they could actually hold on to, and they'd watch the vice presidential debate, there was more to hold on to. And that would maybe reflect on the candidates, the presidential candidates, more than it normally would. The other thing, of course, is the age of the candidates. Vice President Biden's purported, senility or dementia. When those things come into play, it's theoretically one of these VP candidates could be the president within 4 years.
Well, I can make an argument about dementia all over the place. So, well, thank you. Thanks for taking the first trip down the road with us. Dave Crothers, when we come back.
Is your business phone system outdated and expensive to maintain? Most large VoIP companies leave you on hold or struggling through online support and training for your employees. With Beck Connect, you always have fast, friendly, local support. Familiar faces with the know-how to keep you connected. Take advantage of the newest technology in voice calling, video conferencing, and virtual meeting rooms. Beck Connect gives you all the features you need with no upfront investment and no obsolete hardware or software ever again. Simplify your communications. Choose local. Choose Beck Connect.
Everybody needs an off-season, but our announcers have a tough time slowing down.
Incredible! For the second time today, Brent has jammed the printer.
Really tough time.
He swiftly brings it down the lane, and he carries it down the stairway. And he finishes with a slam.
He once won a spelling bee in an ancient language that he did not speak. He is the only man to ever earn extra credit on an IQ exam. His academic degrees are considered legitimate spending currency in 22 nations, 2 principalities, and at Chick-fil-A restaurants in the United States and Western Canada.
I do not always engage with education programming, but when I do, it is the Dr. Duke Show.
Stay educated with the Dr. Duke Show, weekdays at 4 p.m. on Beck News.
Introducing Accord Comfort Sleep Systems, a better way to sleep. We offer you 5 different models to give you the perfect choice of support and body comfort. Every model begins with our exclusive Accord Comfort Reflex Layer. This ensures proper spinal alignment and a deep down body relief. Our 8-inch Whisper Breeze provides a medium firm feel, and our 10-inch Gentle Night model has a quilted top, giving you a medium plush comfort. Both use Outlast fabric on the top of your mattress, ensuring that your body temperature is not too hot and not too cold. Our Copper Rest Sleep Series is our premier mattress, offering your choice of firm, plush, and luxury plush. Every model uses copper-infused gel latex and provides all the health benefits of copper. Accord Comfort mattresses are handcrafted in the USA and come with a 60-night sleep guarantee. You're going to love sleeping with us. Order today exclusively at accordsleep.com or Tom's Home Furnishings in beautiful downtown Harvey.
You're looking for secure private cloud storage, but who can you trust? Big tech companies don't always keep your family photos, videos, and sensitive business information away from prying eyes. Your local Beck Lightband Internet Services comes with 50 gigs of Beck Cloud Backup free. Hometown service with top-tier security to keep your data truly safe and private. Get your 50 gigs free today. Call 701-475-2361 and ask about Beck Cloud Backup.
Welcome back to Down the Road with me, Joel Heitkamp. My next guest is, well, I've been looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Let me give you a little resume here. Executive Vice President of Broadband Association of North Dakota. What does that mean? Well, he and the people that he work with are the very reason that we're able to do this. That's right. Beck Communications is part of that whole team of individuals, like in my neck of the woods, it's Red River, that can make sure from my home in rural Hankinson, I can do any doggone thing I want that they can do in the rest of the world. So, rewarding work that David and his team have done there. Then, let's go to before all of that. I knew David first as probably got to know him more as a lobbyist, but he worked on behalf of those rural telecoms. But when I got into his office, and we started doing a lot of different things together, what I really found out was how deep the well was when it comes to North Dakota history, North Dakota politics. He basically was the right arm of Mark Andrews for a long time. And of course, we as North Dakotans unfortunately lost Senator Andrews recently. Had great life, a lot of public service, and one of the people he counted on to do that was David Crothers. David, welcome to Down the Road.
Welcome, Joel, and congratulations on your new show.
$100. $100 I'll give you for all those great political signs behind you right there.
Well, how about that as a down payment?
I go into his office, folks, and I just walk around, and then I have him explain, and I have him. Is there any one of that art collection, and it really is an art collection, is there any one of those that you look at and you just, I'm the only one that has that?
There is one of those, actually, I would guess, and that is Lydia Langer for governor. When the governor was indicted and removed from office, Lydia, his wife, ran for office. And I was up in Hanna, North Dakota, northwest of Langdon, and walked into an antique shop. A farmer had literally built a Quonset in his yard out there. And this is in 1986 or so. And he had this Lydia Langer poster, and he wanted $25 for it in 1986. And I said, can you come down a little bit? Or that seems like a lot of money. And he said, well, why don't you go find a different one if I'm charging too much?
I like that farmer already. I love him. Oh, one of the reasons I asked you to come on was because of your relationship with Mark Andrews. Senator Andrews, Congressman Andrews, all the different roles he played in the state of North Dakota. When you think of him, what do you think of?
Effectiveness, knowledge, what he did for North Dakota, how important he was to the development in so many areas. Farm programs, garrison diversion. When you walk out and get in the airport in Fargo, when you walk into the terminal in Fargo, you're in a building there wasn't ever money appropriated from that. That money was taken from what was supposed to go to O'Hare Airport in Chicago and brought up to North Dakota. That just tremendously effective.
My dad, and I never did know the politics of my dad. I really didn't. I knew the politics of our mom. She gave all her kids it was either be a Democrat or move out of the house kind of an attitude. But my dad never wore it on his sleeve, but he kept a clipping in his office at his old bulk plant station, and it had him and Mark Andrews in it. He was in his bulk truck, and Mark Andrews come up, obviously asked him for a vote, and they sat there and they BS'd for a while, and the newspaper picked up on it, and he was always proud of that. And I remember being a little kid and saying, who is that? And he'd tell you about Mark Andrews. And he never told me whether he voted for him, but I'm going to tell you, David, I think he did.
I think he probably did too. That's what Mark Andrews excelled at, is constituent service. We think of constituent service now as answering letters and help with Social Security and in all those issues. But when Mark Andrews went to Congress in 1963, I think it was even more local than that, more general than that. It was, we need good roads, but we need good bridges too. If it doesn't matter how good our roads are, if a bridge is bad going there. And he made sure that the bulk dealership had access to the gas and the oil that they needed in those days. It was just a whole nother day and age.
How would you rank his politics? Ultra conservative, moderate? I mean, if you had to define him and label him, which I know you don't like doing because it depends on any specific issue, but if you had to label Mark Andrews, how would you have labeled him?
Joel, that's a tremendously interesting question. If you go back to 1980 to 1986, he went to the Senate in 1980. He was considered a very moderate, in some circles, very liberal Republican in that caucus. He regularly opposed the Reagan administration. He had legendary fights with President Reagan's budget director, David Stockman. Much of the cutting they wanted to do was in agriculture, was in the food and nutrition programs, was in the Rural Electrification Administration, REA, the rural electrics and rural telephones to a degree. So he was very, very moderate and even liberal then. It got to a point he was so liberal, if you will, by Republican standards, that there were conservatives in North Dakota that were unhappy with him by time election time came around. Now, if you go back into the House, you have to keep it into or you have to always remember that Mark Andrews went into the House in 1963. He stayed there until he was elected to the Senate in 1980. And not once in those 17 years did the Republicans have a majority. He was a minority member, backbencher, got what North Dakota got simply through deals. His ability to negotiate, his ability to trade. And what made that possible was his membership on the House Appropriations Committee.
There's another factor that I think of when I think of Mark Andrews, which was to get elected in North Dakota at that time, there truly was two parties in North Dakota at that time. You had individuals that Mark Andrews had to deal with on the other side of the aisle that were quite popular, that were office holders. In fact, when I contacted you, David, you talked to me about the races and the timeline and the history of when Mark Andrews actually lost political races. Walk that through for the audience.
Well, and that was Mark Andrews' introduction to politics. As he was at West Point, he came back to the farm and ran the farm, became involved in local Republican politics, aspired to more, and actually ran for governor in 1962. Ran against Bill Guy. If you'll remember, Joel, until 1964, North Dakota had 2-year terms for governor. So he ran in 1962. Also at that point, there were two congressional districts in the state of North Dakota. There was a Western district and an Eastern district. And at that time, Don Short had been the first member of the member of Congress from the Western district. And then it was Raleigh Redland, then Tom Kleppe, then Art Link. But back to the early 60s, in the Eastern District, it was Hjalmar Nygaard, who had served since the late 50s. And Mark Andrews ran against Bill Guy for governor in 1962. Mark Andrews lost that race by 2,000 votes. Out of about 230,000 cast, he only lost by 2,000. But Bill Guy did win that election and served as governor. However, the following July, Congressman Nygaard was in Washington, D.C., walked into the Capitol's physician's office complaining of chest pains and died in the Capitol that day. He died of a heart attack. So there was a vacancy in the Eastern District of North Dakota. Mark Andrews filed for that seat and won it. And so there were two congressional districts in those days. Mark Andrews was the Eastern District member of Congress and remained so till the census of 1970 took away one of those districts, and then there was just a single at-large district for North Dakota. Art Link was the other. Coincidentally, Art Link was the Western congressman in those days, and Mr. Link declined to run and instead ran for governor, where he was successful and served until 1980, I think.
Yeah, and it's weird, all these fortunes. I was telling you, and we were visiting about the fact that there actually was two political parties. I don't want to demean my party because I think we're still there, we're alive, but we certainly don't hold any of the positions that we used to hold. Mark Andrews, I think, ran into what was more of a modern race against Kent Conrad. It was a time when all this politics and times were changing, but and I know that, that era was tough times on the farm. And so when he lost to Kent Conrad, how big a factor did that play into it?
Joel, there were so many things, and you're exactly right. To describe Mark Andrews' loss to Kent Conrad, you could call it death by 1,000 cuts almost. But it goes to the very individuals themselves. Politics in Congress changed tremendously in the mid-1980s. Prior to that, you had these members of Congress. You never had North Dakota members that sought a national profile or were flashy. You had Milt Young. You had Quentin Bertie. You had Mark Andrews. They were deal makers.
Yeah.
Byron Dorgan changed things in a big, big way.
Dave, if I can, I want to get you keep that thought, because I don't want to get short on it. I want to make sure that people hear exactly that knowledge, that history that you have. So come back in a little bit. We'll keep going down the road with you right here.
As the mayor of Bismarck, I invite you to join together to get our kids back to school, preserve our local economy, and keep Bismarck safe, strong, and resilient. A community task force has been launched to slow the spread of COVID-19 in our community. We're all in this together. Protect yourself and others by doing your part. Wear a mask when you're out and about, and slow the spread of COVID-19. For more information, visit health.nd.gov/coronavirus.
I just went in for a regular mammogram, and I found out that I had a little tumor.
Through the exam and the biopsy, it was determined that I had cancer.
I got a call from one of my doctors that I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
After 5 years, they found a local reoccurrence.
The first thing you hear when you're told you have a cancer, it's a little daunting because you don't know where to go with it.
Since 1999, in a partnership between CHI St. Alexius Health and Sanford Health Bismarck, the Bismarck Cancer Center has provided the most advanced radiation therapies and holistic support services for cancer patients and their loved ones for 20 years.
I've been at the Bismarck Cancer Center since it started. I actually was in the basement of Med Center 1 before, when we had old machines and old equipment. And thankfully, the two hospitals at the time, St. Alexius and Med Center 1, joined forces to create the Bismarck Cancer Center.
I walk in the door, I get nothing but hugs, and I was marveled at them. I mean, I thought it was the best place in the world.
The staff is unbelievably compassionate, and they explain everything to you.
Everybody's genuinely concerned about your well-being, and the level of care is just top-notch. The Cancer Center just does such an amazing job of helping people.
To me and my family, the Cancer Center means life. It's given me the ability to live out my life with my family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren.
Because of them, I'm 2 years out, get to move on with my life, make a difference now for other people.
I would recommend this center because the minute you walk through that door, they've got your back.
This center means so much to me and to the people that are in this building, and we just want to keep giving it back to the community and providing for them what they need.
I'm Katie. I've been cancer-free for 2 years.
I'm Steve, and I've been cancer-free for 4 years.
I've been cancer-free for 10 years.
10 years.
11 years.
15 years.
My name is Lainey, and I've been cancer-free for 18 years.
Bismarck Cancer Center, your partner against cancer for 20 years.
Welcome back to our first ever Down the Road with me, Joel Heitkamp. Before we left, we were having a chance to visit with David Crothers. David worked for Mark Andrews in many different capacities. David now still works on behalf of Broadband Association of North Dakota for the people of North Dakota. So he's still out there, in my personal opinion, doing a lot of public service. But he's a walking historian. And before the break, Dave, I kind of cut you off there, and you were in the middle of a great history lesson in regards to the Andrews and Conrad race. Walk me through that.
It was almost a clash of the generations, Joel. The role of members of Congress, the profile they sought to have in Congress, it was in the midst of a change. Someone described it as it took place in the late 60s in the House, in the mid 80s or the early 80s in the Senate. And it didn't affect Mark Andrews in the House because he'd already been there for almost a decade and he wasn't going to change. And he wasn't going to change when he got to the Senate. Mark Andrews, he was a deal maker. We talked about how he was always in the minority, but on appropriations, it wasn't so much as what he could bring home to North Dakota. It was just as much as what he could do for other members or what he could do to hurt them. And so he was able to amass a tremendous influence in the House of Representatives. When he went to the Senate, he treated that kind of like being a House member in the Senate. It's unheard of today, but Mark Andrews was on the Senate Appropriations Committee. He was on the Senate Budget Committee, and just all the power in the world, in addition to being on Senate Agriculture. And everything was a deal with him. And so they eventually ended up, Time Magazine called him the King of Pork. And that was how he was a legislator. Legislators change, though. I mentioned they look for big national profiles now, and they look for an issue. And Joel, imagine this. Mark Andrews did not have a press secretary in his congressional career until his third year in the United States Senate.
That would be unheard of. That would be completely.
And so that's what I'm trying to illustrate, is that he made a reputation by doing deals, by bringing things back to North Dakota. That's why your father enjoyed the relationship with Mark Andrews, is because it was a personal one, and Mark Andrews could explain to him what he had done for your father's business, what he had done for your community and for Richland County. And your father, living there, understood that. But then a new breed of members of Congress came, and they looked for big profiles, and they flooded the constituents with mail, and they had great graphics, and it was received very, very well by the constituents of every state, including North Dakota. And so there was kind of an evolution there. You asked what was going on in 1986 when Mr. Conrad defeated Mark Andrews. There was a tremendous amount of things going on. The farm economy, it was in horrible shape. 18% interest rates, high farmland costs, huge debt being carried by the farmers, and overproduction. The grain embargo of late 70s, it was President Carter's grain embargo that carried into the 80s. There was too much of everything except money, and not enough of that. There was the malpractice lawsuit where the senator and his family sued Fargo hospitals for the alleged misdiagnosis of his wife, Mary, confined her to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. I literally saw all this stuff and saw the Conrad signs go up in the doctor and nurses' yards and throughout Fargo. That took away from the vote. We also have to remember the era that it was in. And it was after President Reagan had been reelected. It was in the midterm following that. And Mr. Andrews' defeat was not a rarity. There were 8 Republican senators, incumbent senators, defeated for reelection in the United States Senate. Mark Andrews was one of them. It was literally a slaughter of close to unprecedented proportions for Republicans in the United States Senate. And as I mentioned earlier, even the conservatives, especially in Washington, D.C., were unhappy. But there's another observation, and that is Mark Andrews and the Republican Party in North Dakota were never particularly close. They weren't close his entire career. Mark Andrews essentially ran separate from the North Dakota Republicans in the state. He did it throughout his career. He had a great record to rely upon, but they were never particularly close either. So when I say it was death by 1,000 cuts, that's why I say it.
Well, and the other thing I would add to that, and I know you'd agree with, is you've got this young ball of energy named Ken Conrad, who's tax commissioner. At the time, the two young upstarts for the Democratic Party were Byron Dorgan and Ken Conrad. Dorgan being a congressman at that time, passing on the race to become a United States Senator because, quite frankly, not a lot of people wanted to take on Mark Andrews. And yet the dominoes all fell in place. You look at a farmer and tell him he's got 15% interest rates, and he's going to look at somebody to blame. And I'm not so sure that didn't tag along to Mark Andrews as well as the lawsuit. We all know that played a role as well. The thing about that race was it started, there already were okay times as Democrats. We had Governor Guy, we had Governor Link, we had a number of people that held executive office positions or executive positions at the Capitol. We had a good number of legislators from my side of the aisle. But when that new generation came in, you end up with Kent and Byron, and the next thing you've got Earl Pomeroy, and you've got Bud Center as governor. I mean, there was a real time there when the Democrats dominated politics in North Dakota.
Oh, you couldn't be more right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's this block, and it goes for almost a generation. Joel, if you look back from 1963 to 1980, from when Mark Andrews got in, 17 years, over a decade and a half. The only people that North Dakotans knew were Milt Young, Quentin Burdick, and Mark Andrews. To your point, that exact same thing happened from 1992 to 2010. Byron Dorgan, Kent Conrad, and Earl Pomeroy. The first three served 17 years. The next three served 18 years. You've got more than a generation where we have these blocks of members of Congress, and that's all we knew.
Well, and I will tell you this. From my standpoint, there was a lot of hope, optimism. We can talk about the Spaeth race and how the Democratic Party kind of divided and fell apart. There'll be more history lessons. I've got your cell phone, and that's your problem, not mine, because I'll be able to call you and have more of these type of sessions. But what I will add is this. I know you stay in touch with people. That's one of your biggest strengths. I know that you know the Andrews family, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say on behalf of all of those people that are viewing you right now that we hope you convey that message of thank you to the Andrews family for that service. It's something I think that people forget to say thank you for. You're not going to get rich doing it. You're going to give a lot of time away doing it. But, I think it's something we all forget to do, and that is to say thank you. So if you can tell the Andrews family that, I think it'd be great.
I'd be honored to carry that message on behalf of you and your audience, sir.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, David.
Good luck.
Yep. David Crothers, ladies and gentlemen. He's one of the good ones. He's somebody you could always count on. Back in my legislative days, there were times we were cross. I mean, we're bound to be. That's the whole process. But a handshake with him was as solid as Sears. If he told you he was going to do something, it got done. And here was the beauty of how Dave took his position with Broadband Association now. It was the rural telecoms before. Was he never bothered you unless it mattered. And I liked that. As a legislator, I liked not having somebody just hang around in the hallways wanting to talk to you. If he talked to you, if he took some of your time, it was important. All right, when we come back, just a couple of comments for you, and we'll talk about our next guest tomorrow.
You just might find the home of your dreams this weekend by watching the Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes Sundays at 6 p.m. and Wednesdays at 7 on Beck, featuring properties from Bismarck, Mandan, Minot, and surrounding areas. The Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes presents desirable properties that are for sale, lets you meet your Alliance realtors, and provides critical insights into local happenings from community and business leaders. Join us this Sunday evening at 6 or Wednesday at 7 for the Alliance Real Estate Tour of Homes on Beck.
Today's households have more digital devices than ever before. More links to family, business, education, and entertainment. Beck Communications spent over 10 years building North Dakota's fastest fiber optic internet service. Beck Lightband Internet, outpacing speeds in large cities nationwide. Lightband Internet handles all your digital needs without throttling your connection to the world. Beck Communications, valuable digital connections in rural North Dakota.
He once won a spelling bee in an ancient language that he did not speak. He is the only man to ever earn extra credit on an IQ exam. His academic degrees are considered legitimate spending currency in 22 nations, 2 principalities, and at Chick-fil-A restaurants in the United States and Western Canada.
I do not always engage with education programming, but when I do, it is the Dr. Duke Show.
Stay educated with the Dr. Duke Show, weekdays at 4 p.m. on Beck News.
Beautiful day to get out on the course, isn't it, Corey?
Without a doubt, Brian. And Scotty here was thinking the exact same thing.
There's a lot on the line for him today. He told his friends he's a scratch golfer, but the numbers today suggest otherwise. Ooh, swing and a miss.
Looks like he's excited to find that Titleist. Unfortunately, he was playing with Mojos.
Ooh, and a major infraction just occurred. Can we get another look at that?
As from my angle, it looks like he's got about a 10, 12-foot putt slightly.
As the mayor of Bismarck, I invite you to join together to get our kids back to school, preserve our local economy, and keep Bismarck safe, strong, and resilient. A community task force has been launched to slow the spread of COVID-19 in our community. We're all in this together. Protect yourself and others by doing your part. Wear a mask when you're out and about, and slow the spread of COVID-19. For more information, visit health.nd.gov/coronavirus.
Trusting your digital life to faceless tech giants can be risky. Will they keep your family and business information truly safe from prying eyes? If you subscribe to local Beck Lightband Internet service, you already have Beck Cloud Backup. Beck Cloud Backup is the safest, most private cloud storage for all your family memories, schoolwork, and business documents. Call 701-475-2361 to start using your free space on Beck Cloud Backup today.
Well, so far we've made it down the road a little bit, folks. I hope you've enjoyed it. Always going to end these shows with just a little bit of commentary, with just a little bit of thoughts of the day that'll either get you mad or kicking pebbles, or, you know, you might just agree with them. But either way, they're going to be coming your way as long as you hang in there with us. The President of the United States has COVID. We all know that. In fact, I think the world knows that. The President's made some pretty harsh statements about COVID prior to contracting it himself. Do you remember the bleach? Do you remember the light bulb? I mean, nobody wanted to shove a light bulb up their keister, and nobody really believed it would help, right? But the president's been so far afield when it comes to all of this. Now, that being said, now that he has it, he has the best medical help you can possibly have. I mean, you get in a helicopter, you go to Walter Reed, and everybody pays attention, right? But the president came out and talked about how great he's doing. And he talked about what a blessing it was for him to have contracted COVID. In fact, let's watch this.
I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise. I caught it. I heard about this drug. I said, let me take it. It was my suggestion. I said, let me take it. And it was incredible the way it worked. Incredible. And I think if I didn't catch it, we'd be looking at that like a number of other drugs. But it really did a fantastic job. I want to get for you what I got, and I'm going to make it free. You're not going to pay for it.
So, couple points there. What took him so long? I mean, what in the world took him so long? He's president of the United States, and he had the ability to find out anything he wanted. He has scientist after scientist around him. But you got to believe in it, right? You've got to believe in the science. Now he's talking about some miracle cure. What if you're one of the individuals that is watching us right now on Down the Road? What if you've lost a family member to COVID? What do you think their reaction to this was? We all want it to go away. We all want someone to come with a miracle wand and just say, look, it's going to go away. We all want to pretend that God has put his blessings down on just us. And we're going to take that and we're going to use the money and we're going to put it out to each other. It's irresponsible is what it is. It's incredibly irresponsible. I'm happy for the president that he's alive. I'm happy for his family that he's alive. Many of the people that contracted COVID are alive. And many of the people that attracted COVID came out of it just fine. I get that. But when you say things like that, when you do things like that, you know, you're dividing. The country is going to divide even more. I mean, what if you just looked into that camera and said, look, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I'm here. I need to find ways to keep you here. It isn't all about me. But that's been a struggle for this president all along, hasn't it? He's never been able to think about anything but himself. Now, earlier in the show, we talked about who won the debate last night. Let me tell you my take on who won the debate. Kamala Harris won, and she won because she didn't fumble. She had the ball and she didn't fumble. Did she get it across the goal line? Nope. That wasn't her job. Her job was to just hang on to the ball so that she could hand it off to Joe Biden. And then he'll do the getting it across the goal line. They're not there yet. And there's a whole lot of Democrats predicting they're going to be the first ones across that goal line. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is this. Last night, she only could have hurt. She was never going to really help. She only could have hurt, and she didn't. And she didn't. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I think she won that debate. Coming up tomorrow on Down the Road, Superintendent Kirsten Baszler is going to join us. Superintendent Baszler is the one that is trying to keep these schools open. We'll ask her how it's going. Until then, it's been good riding with you down the road.